Welcome back to another edition of the Musketeer Madness podcast, episode 3 of the offseason. Pretty fun one coming up. We have Dante Maddox, the Toledo transfer, joining the show. Someone who should have a pretty big impact on the season this year, and pretty fitting interview today. We're talking about wings. Ben Haller alongside John Baldridge. Those kind of 2, 3 positions. A position that really Xavier has been one of their biggest strengths, especially if you look at specifically last year. One of really their only strengths was the wing position with Desmond Claude and Quincy Oliveri taking over the 2 and 3 positions and doing pretty well offensively with that. It looks interesting this year. It's almost all newcomers. Dalen Swain returns for his sophomore season, which he has made a big jump. I know I attended practice a couple months ago and really looked like the specific practice I went to. It looked like Dalen Swain was dominating practice. And then honestly, the strengths of this transfer class are in the wing group as well. Dante Maddox, like we mentioned, from Toledo, and then everyone's excited about Ryan Conwell from Indiana State. Marcus Foster from Furman should have an impact. So the wing room is one of the, honestly probably has the highest ceiling out of any room on this Xavier team.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be back with you again this week, Ben. And, it's exciting. We're getting very close. Musketeer Madness is a week away now. And, we talked about point guards last week, and you have two guys that you really trust in Trey Green and also Davion McKnight. This is a different question. Yes, you bring back, but besides that, where does the production come from? You bring in these transfers that Sean Miller's really believed in. You had some transfers last year from, overseas, but you bring in these guys from Furman, as you mentioned, Indiana State. And the question is, can that production come back where you had Oliveri and you had Claude last year? And can they be able to have that point production, those 35 points per game we talked about last week? And I don't know if it will or not, but I want to know your opinion on, do you think we get 35 points from these guys this season?
There's a couple of ways to look at it, and especially you preface it by saying this. Last year with Oliveri and with Claude, they really were the only help. They didn't have a lot of help offensively. I mean, Davion McKnight, scoring wise, did come on a little bit at the end of the year, kind of in that point guard role. Trey Green as well. But there's a couple of ways to look at that. That on one hand, you say, well, there really was no other option, so they were going to get all the shots, so naturally they were going to score a lot more. Or you could say, hey, it's impressive that they did what they did without having that kind of help. I mean, they really were getting all the defensive attention, and it felt like one of those one of the two every single game between Claude and Oliveri, broke out for a 25, 30 point game, and that's what made it so fun to watch. Interested to see how that changes this year, obviously. I mean, you have one of the best offensive bigs in the country coming back, hoping he's fully healthy, and Zach Freeman coming off the injury. He hasn't played basketball in a long time. Everything I've heard and what I've seen from practice, I will say he looks to be in one of the best shapes of his life. And I mean, if he can really be that big of a threat offensively, not miss a step from where he left off 2 seasons ago, that takes a lot of pressure off of the wings. They won't have to score those 35 points per game like you were talking about, and they have more freedom. The other thing within the wing room, not only not having help from other positions, outside of Claude and Oliveri, I mean, look, Dalen Swain, it was his freshman season. Even if he has a big year this year, I mean, he wasn't a ton of offensive help a season ago. So those two guys in those two positions, not only did they not have help from other positions, they didn't have help outside of those two. There's could be a game where Ryan Conwell and Dante Maddox both get shut down, but Dalen Swain breaks out, or Marcus Foster does a pretty good job coming off the bench. That's where it becomes interesting. There's not a need for them to score 35 points per game, and I definitely think they have the capability. That's where this team gets fun. You listen to Sean Miller talk about this team coming up and why he thinks they're going to be good. It is such a deep team, and you can really feel that in the shooting guard and the small forward room.
Yeah, the depth is a huge animal this year. You struggled with that last year. I think bringing in these guys, you mentioned a good point. It's not just the points, but also it's the defense.
Yeah.
Last year, they really struggled at defense. It's a Sean Miller team year in and year out. It's been talked about the defense. And last year, they scored they scored the basketball very well when you had Quincy putting up 20 points a game. You had Claude out there as well, and you had Davion McKnight. I think if you can get points production from Foster or a couple of these other guys on this team this year, work the ball inside. We talked about last week with Freeman and Hunter. I think that's the big thing, trying to get the ball inside of these big guys. Also, you have Hugley down there this year. We'll talk about the centers and the power forwards later on in the show this season, but I think that's where the production comes from, inside in the paint this year.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. The defense is obviously one of the biggest question marks. I don't even the offense. You can pretty confident in, and not because I'm confident that Ryan Conwell specifically is going to average 18 points per game, or that Dante Maddox is going to shoot 45% for three. Not that I'm confident in that, but it's the fact that the probability that one of those things happening. There's just so many options. Offensively, I'm not worried. The defense is an interesting part, and one of the biggest things is size. I mean, you look at Dante Maddox and Ryan Conwell. There is a very real chance that that is your starting two and your starting three, with Fremantle and either Hughley or Traore starting at the five, obviously with McKnight at the one. That is a pretty small combination of wings. Dante Maddox, I think he's listed about 6'2". Ryan Connell about 6'4". They're sitting right around that. But for your three to be 6'4", I mean, you're playing a dangerous game there defensively. Conwell Maddox are two guys that have the ability to defend, but I don't know. I might be at a point where I say I might want to see Swain start just to help things defensively. And he's kind of the opposite of that height size. Look, one of my first impressions when I went to practice in August is that Dalen Swain, he grew at least an inch or two. He was his size wise was looking about the same height as Jerome Hunter, which I think that is going to be so valuable to this team to have someone who can play the three like that, but can also provide that size on the defensive end of things is going to be huge for them. I think Swain is one of the key pieces to this puzzle.
I think one thing you mentioned is big. You talk about going to practice and seeing this team. And one guy we don't ever talk about is Andy Cutler. And Andy Cutler is their strength coach. He's a guy who was with the Brewers for a while. He was with Chris Mack down at Louisville. He's now here with Sean Miller. He's the guy who's put these guys in great shape. You've seen Hugley cut down. We've seen, you mentioned Claude getting bigger. We saw guys in the past who've been able to grow in size and go in strength. You talk about Fremantle adding size. I mean, the question is, with so much depth, we talked about Conley this year. Where does the fix and the mix for Sean Miller be able to put all these guys and use all these guys in different spots? And we'll see more when the season grows and we talk more during the season. But right now, it's a sure question to be answered.
Yeah, and I think it's not just the height for Swain too. I think you could see, he got bigger throughout the year and that or throughout the offseason, and that's going to be huge for Xavier moving forward. Is if they have that kind of size. Back to the whole starting lineup thing. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. The offense can look so good. I always said it's going to be so tough. I don't know what you do if Zach as a defense, if Zach Fremantle is having the kind of season he had his junior season, or I guess it would be his true senior season, which was 2 seniors ago. Now he's going to his sixth year. And if you have two 40% three-point shooters, both Ryan Conwell and Dante Maddox on the perimeter, those are two guys that no aren't just good shooters that you have to keep an eye on. Those are guys that potentially you have to face guard. So having to face guard both of those guys while also having to double team Zach Fremantle every time he touches the ball inside the paint, I mean, it makes it so tough on a defense. That's why the rotations part is going to be so interesting, and it's going to take Sean a lot of time, I think, to figure out just who he wants to play together on the floor. Because I think Conwell Maddox, while you're giving up some size defensively, this might be a team where you look at like, hey, here, like the 2022-2023 season where they made the Sweet 16 in Sean Miller's first year of his second stint, where it's like, we're going to give up a lot of points, but you're going to score and you're going to run every time you get the ball, whether it's out of the net or off a rebound. You're going to beat the other team down the floor. You're going to be efficient. You're going to shoot the ball well from three. It feels like this team has that makeup, the makeup of a team that does those three things very well, even if they're not defending too well.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Ryan Conwell, a guy who averaged about 15 at Indiana State last year. He has a couple of years here at Xavier, and I'm excited for him. But I think this will make him a much better player. Having Maddox, having Conwell, and having guys he can build that around. And, I felt like he had a good season last year, but if he can even get better this year, and having those help there with him will help him perform better, I think, on the opposite side of the ball and also on the defensive side of the ball this season. A guy who kind of struggled defensively at points last year, I thought.
Yeah, it like I said, it just complements the bigs and Davion McKnight so much more. I mean, think about how much help this is going to be for Davion McKnight. I mean, you mentioned it. I You also take a little pressure off of him defensively because McKnight last year he a lot of times was guarding the best guards with Claude and Oliveri sometimes struggling defensively. So if McKnight can get that help defensively. Now maybe he's not guarding the best offensive guard. Now he's maybe guarding the second or third. Not to say that he's a bad defender, but once again, I think it's one of those things where it's almost a size issue. The depth we talked about being so important, and I look, I'm excited for Marcus Foster. John Rothstein just visited Xavier, I think it was last week, and he came away talking about Foster and how he's one of the sleepers on the Xavier team. I went into practice and going into the offseason thinking, I don't know how much Foster is going to play, but I think with a deeper team, he's going to spread out the minutes a little bit more. And I think Foster's someone who's going to really going to eat minutes in this situation.
Yeah. And, you look at the schedule early on, and you got some tough games. You got TCU, and you take on some tough opponents. You bring in Wake Forest, the Cintas Center, inside non-conference play. And last year you had Purdue, and you had some tough teams. But I think what you saw last year when you headed to the NCAA tournament and Xavier was trying to get a bid, and they kind of went away from, having those tough non-conference schedules. And yeah, you got still a tough one this year, but I don't think it's as tough as it was last
No,
year.
definitely not. And Miller made a point of that.
Yeah.
I think you could tell he was kind of upset because a lot of last year was out of his control, specifically with the Gavin and the Big East Big 12 games. I mean, you played Purdue and Houston in those two games that you don't have control over your own schedule in just those two games. And that was the number one and number two team in the country.
Yeah, so back to my point, I just think the way they built the schedule this year will help them early on and help Davion McKnight, help some of these young guys, help these transfers out to really grow as a team and build that chemistry up. And that's something we saw and we kind of struggled with last year for Xavier. And if they can just grow that a little better this year, I think when we get into conference play, take on UConn, take on St. John's, take on some of these tough teams coming inside Centos, it's going to help out this team in the long term.
All right, I want to make predictions real quick. Specifically, let's stick on the offensive side of the ball. Four guys who have the potential to score a lot, and it's going to be interesting. A lot of it obviously depends on what playing time looks like. But if we look at four specific guys in Dante Maddox, Ryan Conwell, Dalen Swain, Marcus Foster, who's going to have the best offensive output? I feel like this might be the obvious easy answer, but I think Conwell's going to be the best scorer out of those. I think Dante Maddox is right behind. I might put Dalen Swain in between them. Dalen Swain might have the second best performance this season offensively. But I think it's going to be so close between those three. I think Marcus Foster kind of provides that defense that you need, that rebounding that you need at a bigger guard position. And who knows if he wants to play Freemantle at the five or give Freemantle a blow. Marcus Foster has the ability to play the four. When I went to practice, they were running fives. Jerome Hunter hadn't been cleared 5-on-5 yet, so they were down a big. So Marcus Foster was actually playing up, guarding Zach Freemantle. Zach Freemantle doing the same. And I actually thought defensively they both did pretty well on each other, which gives you a hope for a couple of things. Marcus Foster can guard up. He can guard a bigger guy. And also Zach Freemantle might be able to guard someone who can stretch the floor a little bit. That helps Miller's ideology of really wanting to play Freemantle at the four.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a tough question. I think you got four great guys right there, and I think Foster's not a weak link at all. I mean, he averaged about 17 points a game at Furman last year, and a guy who can score offensively very well. He's 6'5", so he can go up against a guy like Freemantle, I think, and hopefully that builds him in games. And I think when we get there and we have so much depth, if these guys can stay healthy, I think you have a very good potential for a lot of depth across that bench this year.
All right, don't want to keep you guys waiting too long on that Dante Maddox interview. Pretty interesting one coming up. But yeah, the wing room has a lot of depth, but a lot of question marks, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And I think the ceiling is the highest out of any position group on this Xavier team moving forward. That does it for the talking segment between John Baldridge, I'm Ben Haller. Be right back with Dante Maddox on the Musketeer Madness podcast. Welcome back to another special edition, a special one-on-one sit-down here on the Musketeer Madness podcast, brought to you by the Field of 68 Podcast Network. I'm here with Xavier guard, Toledo transfer Dante Maddox. Dante, thanks for coming in on a very important time, and one that Coach Miller stressed is one of the most important times for you guys.
Oh, for sure. Thank you all for having me.
Mm-hmm. The summer and these workouts coming up, we just sat in a couple of them. Very important, especially for a team with a lot of transfers like yourself, a lot of new guys coming together who haven't really played together. How have you kind
kind of seen everybody gel together at the start of the summer?
Yeah, I think it's been a night and day experience from day one to now being in the last week of the summer. Everybody's kind of growing, I feel like, at a rapid pace, and we're all slowly adjusting and getting adjusted each day a little more and more.
With a couple of the players that we talked about the last couple of days, there's kind of like a give and take and maybe a trading of experience. You're somebody who's played college basketball for a while, so you can kind of help those other younger players just with the college basketball game in general. But there are some younger guys who have been at Xavier for maybe a year or two that you haven't, and have gotten you acclimated to Sean Miller's style and everything. Is that kind of something you've seen?
Yeah, I think it's a kind of a mutual balance, with the returners and kind of getting everybody else up to speed a little bit. But also on the flip side, I think that because we've been we're more of an experienced team with players who've played for a decent amount of time in college basketball, that process of them getting us up to speed has been, I think, like expedited, like faster. I think we all are kind of catching on pretty quickly.
Yeah, and you obviously weren't here last year, but it was a team that didn't have the best year that they necessarily wanted, coming off a Sweet 16 year the year before. And I'm sure you've kind of been made aware of that. Do you feel that sense of urgency this particular summer? You've had a lot of summer workouts, but does this one feel different because of where Sean Miller wants to go?
Yeah, for sure. I think it is a sense of urgency to hold the standard that's been set here at Xavier for a very long time, way before I've been playing college basketball. This is a rich tradition of winning, and I think that's the standard here. And I think that's the standard for any Sean Miller team. So it's definitely a sense of urgency to get back on track, and I think he has the right collective group to make that happen.
Now let's jump back to the very beginning of your college career. Now everybody knows transfer from Toledo, but a lot of people may not know. First 2 years for you were at Cal State Fullerton, and you come from Chicago Heights. So you came a long way, going all the way out west. What was that initial recruitment like, and how has that been different than your other two portal transfers?
Yeah, so I think I'm a big thing on being somewhere where I think I can grow as a person and as a player, and I think I had the best chance to do that at Cal State Fullerton as a young guy being in the Chicago area. I think from a basketball standpoint, I think coming into when I committed, I was slightly overlooked. So going out west, I think it was just the best chance for me to rebrand and really continue to grow and get better and play right away in college. And it was a great experience being 17, 18 years old, all the way on the other side of the country during the COVID time. It was a lot, but it was an experience that I won't ever, I couldn't ask for one better in terms of helping me mature as a young man and as a basketball player with adversity, etc. So.
Well, on the court, I think it was pretty apparent the leap you made from your freshman to sophomore season, not only individual-wise, but as a team too. You got to make an NCAA tournament. How was that experience?
It was a great experience. I was at the time kind of in and out, like with injuries and everything else. So when it comes to actually being on the court and playing, I didn't really experience that much at that time in the NCAA tournament. But being there, being present, being able to see, it's an unbelievable experience. And there's so many people at that level, the mid-major level, who don't ever get to have it. So having it just gave it a more magical experience. And it's something I will never forget. And I've been very hungry to get back. And I think that's a big reason on why I chose to want to be a part of what Coach Miller has here at Xavier. It's just my desire to want to get back and make a run in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, those atmospheres are just different. And maybe even if you weren't on the court, but being there in that moment, I mean, this is a Xavier team that doesn't have a ton of guys who have made the NCAA tournament. So do you feel like, obviously that's one of the goals for this team, do you feel like if you get there, that's something you can really help with?
Oh, for sure. I think it's something that here, I think that's more of kind of like a standard. Like at the other places that I was at, going to the tournament was like a beautiful thing. It was a very hard thing to do. It's one big conferences. The odds is literally not in your favor. You know, being at somewhere here like the Big East and the tradition that's here, just in this conference, is going to the tournament for the top half of the league is you can count on that usually year in, year out. So it's just being there is one thing, but now I think my personal goal is to not only get there, but to help make a real run and, you know, make a Final Four, go ahead and try to be part of something historic.
So the first time you're in the portal after the 2 years at Cal State Fullerton, you go to Toledo, obviously a lot closer to home for you. Was that one of the biggest factors?
100%. I knew that I wanted to come closer to home. I knew I wanted to, my parents haven't seen me in like 2 years, you know, with the whole COVID, especially in California. It was very big, and nobody wanted to get sick, you know, comes to that. So coming back closer to home, my dad, my family was able to watch me playing since I was in high school, and that was a big thing. And then also going to a very like respectable powerhouse mid-major program that's won 4 MAC championships regular seasons in a row. So being able to come back and be a part of another winning culture and be a part of more history, it was a great experience.
There are a lot of programs like that in the MAC. Was there a biggest difference, you would say, from going from the Big West to the MAC? I know a lot of people talk about how fast the pace of play is from the Big West to maybe slowing things down to the MAC.
Yeah, for me, I think it was kind of flipped from the sense of in the Big West, just where the strengths of teams were. I think the Big West had a lot of great like teams that was put together in terms of a team. I think MAC, you might find more talented individual players. Like since I've been there, I know you find one or two NBA players every year coming out of the MAC getting drafted. You know, like the one when I was there, Monty Bates, who obviously got drafted, and even at Toledo, Ryan Rollins was drafted the year before I got there. And I mean, the conference usually has some really good talented players, and I'll say that's the biggest difference in my experience from the Big West to the MAC. Yeah.
You get to Toledo, and that's where you really start to break out, especially the most recent season. Second team All-MAC, he averaged almost 16 points per game. That was top 10 in the MAC. You mentioned how many talented scorers there were in that conference. What was one of the biggest things that you think helped you break out a little bit? Was it just being in college for 3 or 4 years?
That, but also being somewhere where winning is a non-negotiable. Winning is important, and I think that separates, you know, players in general is winning. It's just pretty simple. I think my experience in the MAC with that, it was like I said, it's a lot of talented players, and that goes from the best team in the MAC to the worst team. You know, the worst team has somebody who's really good and could put 30 points up. Similar, I know that's like that here in the Big East as well. So just being able to find a way to impact winning, you know, is huge, and it's something that I pride myself on. Yeah.
All right, Dante, we'll get more to your next portal edition going to Xavier right back on Musketeer Madness podcast.
As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68 each and every week of the college basketball season. We have a special offer that will be available starting on Tuesday, January 9th and running through Monday, February 12th, the morning after Super Bowl 58. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, in honor of the big game, you can use the bonus code FIELD158 and you'll get $158 in free bets on your first wager with BetMGM, regardless of whether or not you win that first bet. Here's how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FIELD158. Deposit at least $5 and place your first wager on any game. You'll receive $158 in bonus bets regardless of the outcome of your bet. Just make sure that you use that bonus code FIELD158 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available under one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient when I have to go cover games in New York or Philly, which happens quite a bit. When you cross state borders, you just log into your existing account and fire away. You don't have to create separate accounts in each state. It's easy, it's simple, it's clean. And most importantly, we have some fun stuff coming up for the heart of the college basketball season. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odd boosts, and my favorite, a nice juicy parlay boost. So download the BetMGM app and sign up today. Field 158.
Welcome back to another special one-on-one sit-down with Xavier guard Dante Maddox here on the Musketeer Madness podcast. Dante, we talked about your first couple of schools. Now, second time, you've got the recognition. You got a second-team All-MAC under your belt. You shot over 40% from three, and I think when you look at the portal, a lot of teams were looking for really good three-point shooters. What was different about your second time in the portal than the first?
I'll say the difference is probably being coveted, being kind of sought after by some of the bigger schools that, I've never been recruited by. So I think that was a big difference is that it was a pretty cool experience, getting able to go and knowing that I was going to play at the highest level somewhere and figuring that all out. I think that was a cool experience, getting to just go to certain schools and campuses and being here and seeing all this has to offer. And Xavier's a beautiful place. So,
7 incoming transfers for Xavier. And if I'm not mistaken, remember correctly, you were the third after Foster and Hughley came in. We watched practice, and being around the team, it seems like the portal class is already really close. It's just everybody on the team. Were there conversations with the guys before you that came here, Foster and Hughley, trying to recruit you even more? And then on the flip side, were you trying to recruit some of the guys like Conwell?
Honestly, it kind of all happened so fast. Not as much as you would think. I knew John a little bit just from playing around. I know he's from the Cleveland, just being in the Midwest area. So we had 1 or 2 conversations before, but the portal, it all kind of happened so fast. You kind of didn't, really get too much to talk, but a little bit, yeah, for sure.
Was there one certain selling point from Coach Miller, one thing he said at any of the meetings that really made you feel like this was home?
Not necessarily one thing he said, just the consistency of what he was saying, and how from day one when they reached out to me and showed interest from the day that I committed, it was the exact same pitch. Everything was the exact same. Nothing changed. And also being in the portal, a lot changes, in a very short amount of time. And they just were very consistent. And that's things that in my life I'll try to find as much as I can. So, yeah.
You were recruited by some pretty highly regarded programs in Michigan, Louisville, Illinois, a few teams that were in there. You're also coming into a portal class that has a lot of really talented scoring guards. I mean, I think the offense is the first thing that jumps out at you when you look at just the portal class on paper. Is that something you felt right away when you got here?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think just a lot of talented, skilled basketball players, and usually that's usually a recipe for success. When you have a bunch of skilled and high IQ players that are on the same team, and if everybody gets on the same page and we all have the same goal in mind, that's usually a recipe for success.
A lot of really good shooters on the team. Conwell, another one in that portal class that shot over 40% from three a season ago. Trey Green was a pretty big recruit because of his three-point shooting. Now I hear that you and Trey have a little bit of a shooting challenge shootout after every practice. Is that something that he says he's pretty confident that he's ahead right now?
No, it's not that at all. But that, and I think we got a competition with free throws. Mm-hmm. We all keep our it's called stripe work. We keep our free throw percentages every time. We shoot 50 free throws every day, and unfortunately, I'm in second right now. He got me by a little bit. It's gonna be hard to catch him because unless you just have a terrible shooting day where he misses a lot. But we both talking about the whole summer shooting 97, 98 percentile free throws is pretty good. So it's a nice little rivalry. But
I'm sure the coaches are a little happier with the free throw than the 3-point shooting in terms of importance.
Yeah, for sure. You need to make those. So.
And it's not only the guards with this team. There's a lot of talented big men too. Specifically Fremantle. I mean, even if you've seen the numbers or just seen him play, practiced with them. Somebody who's averaged double digits 3 years of his career in college. Another one of the guys who's been in college for a while, like yourself. What's been your first experiences playing with him?
Very, very skilled, very good, and dominance to him in the way he plays is very consistent, and it can just kind of like just overwhelm you if you don't make any adjustments. And he can play inside, he can play out. Very skilled, tough, a very, very good player to have on your side, no doubt.
Yeah, the archetype of a Sean Miller offense, and you go back a couple of years ago, look at the Xavier team that made the Sweet 16. There were a few things that jump out to you. 3-point shooting is really important. They had 5 guys who could shoot from 3, really efficient, and they worked really fast. Is that something that you feel like is going to be a big part of this year's offense?
100%. That's the biggest thing I think with all the transfers is getting them acclimated to just the speed that we play at, the speed and the tempo and the pace. And I think it's something that from day one to now we've made tremendous strides, but we still haven't met his standard, and he lets us know that. And it's another level that we're gonna go to, and when the time comes, we'll be ready for it. We'll be ready. We'll be there. So I'm excited for that.
And on the flip side of the ball, both our first couple of interviews with Davion and Trey, they said a big emphasis right now, and I think I could tell in practice, was defensive intensity. That's something that there's been struggles with the last couple of years under Sean Miller's teams. So the defensive intensity and the will to want to get stops.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that's something that they've emphasized a lot. They've emphasized and definitely have taken time each day in practice to make sure that it's a priority, to make sure that we all get on the same page and get a lot of reps defensively, just to get used to the tempo, just to get used to the standard, of how we need to play, the intensity we need to play with defensively, and do that every day, and it becomes second nature, it becomes natural. So I think that's what we're trying to do.
A few more, Dante, before we close things out. What's one memory, either can be from high school, Cal State Fullerton, or from Toledo, that you're going to miss the most about one of those schools?
I think a cool thing is my first time being able to go home and play back in Chicago since I was in high school, and we get to play DePaul at Wintrust Arena in my senior year in high school. The last time I played in Wintrust, I had a great game, like 35 points, and I missed like one shot.
Yeah.
So that's just a good memory, but that I have in high school. But being able for all my family and friends to be able to come back and kind of reverse the clock a little bit and see me play, because I've been gone, for so long. For them to be able to see me play in my last year it's a blessing for sure. So I'm excited for that. So
Xavier fans can expect 35 points when you guys travel to DePaul?
Man, that would be. Listen, I don't want to pick and choose when that happens. Whenever it happens, hopefully, if that happens, it happens in the most important game possible. So yeah, but it wouldn't hurt to do that.
That's a good answer. Yeah. Other than playing in Wintrust again, what's one thing this upcoming season you're looking forward to?
Just playing against the competition at the Big East, with hoes, being able to play against the top of the top. I mean, that obviously starts with the pinnacle of college basketball right now, and that's UConn, coming off back-to-back national championships. But just the tradition behind them and behind Marquette, and how amazing Creighton has been, and even playing the historical teams, in my opinion, being a basketball junkie like St. John's and Georgetown.
Old Big East.
Yeah, those. It's a beautiful beautiful thing for me as a basketball fan, and as a kid to be able to play ball, at Madison Square Garden and stuff like that. So I'm very excited for that.
All right, last question before we head off. What's one thing Xavier fans don't know about Dante Maddox that you think they should?
Just that I'm a pretty fun guy. I think I got a pretty good personality. I think that I'll be able to be likable to the fans, like somebody that the fans can gravitate towards, and somebody that can put smiles on their faces, whether that's on or off the court, and I'm a very approachable and personable person, so I think that's something that I can't wait for Xavier Nation, to get to see from me.
Yeah, I think they'll like hearing that. I appreciate you taking the time.
Sure.
That was Xavier's Dante Maddox, another exclusive one-on-one sit-down here on the Musketeer Madness podcast.